The air crackles with the raw, unfiltered energy of 1,000 voices roaring in unison. The screen is a sea of red flags waving, and at its center, a man pounding a podium, his face a mask of performative certainty. "I'm a genius," he bellows, the declaration echoing through the arena. "I'm like a super genius! I aced every test. I have one of the highest IQs!" The claim hangs in the air, a gauntlet thrown down not in a scholarly journal, but in the Colosseum of political theater. It is loud, it is chaotic, it is designed to overwhelm. And then, a sudden, stark silence. The frantic rally footage vanishes, replaced by the cool, intimate calm of a television studio. The lights are soft, the audience a quiet murmur. The camera glides past the host's desk and finds its true subject, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. She sits with an almost regal composure, her expression unreadable, a portrait of stillness amidst the noise. Jimmy Kimmel offers a sly, knowing smile to the camera. "We have that on tape," he says almost casually, and the boast from the rally blares once more, now sounding crude and jarring in this new, quiet context. A ripple of uneasy laughter runs through the studio audience. All eyes turn to the Congresswoman. Kimmel leans in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone that demands a truth the rally could never contain. "Representative," he begins, "you're a former public defender. You've literally taken IQ tests as part of your career. What do you make of that?" For a heartbeat, she says nothing. Then a slow, knowing smile touches her lips. It isn't a smirk of mockery, the calm of a surgeon about to make a precise incision. "Well, Jimmy," she says, her voice steady and clear, cutting through the tension like a laser. "There's a big difference between saying you're smart and actually being smart." In that single sentence, the battlefield was drawn. She had just defined the terms of the conflict, and in doing so, she was about to administer an IQ test he was destined to fail. But why did this moment on a late-night comedy show of all places carry such immense weight? This was far more than just a tense television exchange. This was the collision of two competing American realities, a primal clash between the politics of spectacle and the politics of substance. On one side, the roaring stadium, the cult of personality, the belief that truth is whatever you can shout the loudest. On the other, the quiet confidence of a sharp legal mind, the belief that truth is found in facts, in preparation, in the unshakable foundation of actual accomplishment. Jimmy Kimmel's stage, with its deceptively cheerful lights and laughing audience, has become our modern-day gladiatorial arena. Here, political figures aren't tested by lengthy policy papers or floor votes. They are tested in real time by poise, by wit, by the ability to withstand a moment of unexpected, piercing scrutiny under the bright, unforgiving gaze of a nation. For Donald Trump, this was just another stop on his endless victory tour, another platform to play his greatest hits. The character of the infallible, self-proclaimed genius, expecting a gentle interview, softballs, and easy applause from a friendly crowd. He saw a stage, he did not see the trap being set. But for Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a rising star forged in the intense fires of the courtroom and the congressional hearing room, this was something else entirely. It was a strategic opportunity, a chance to expose a fundamental and glaring weakness hidden in plain sight beneath the bluster and bravado. He walked into that studio believing he was the one in control, the master of ceremonies for his own meth. He had no idea he was walking directly into a confrontation he could not bully his way through, a trap not sprung by the host, but baited by his own runaway ego, and waiting to be closed by a congresswoman who was about to wield the most dangerous weapon of all, the simple, undeniable truth. To understand the depth of the trap he walked into, you have to understand the architecture of the boast itself. This was not a one-off comment, a simple slip of the tongue. This was a lifetime in the making. The claim of genius is the foundational pillar of the Trump persona, a carefully cultivated myth repeated so often and with such force that it was meant to become unassailable truth. We have seen this movie before, a greatest hits reel of self-praise that plays on a loop, the infamous, stable genius press conference, where he stood before the nation not to detail policy, but to aggressively, defensively assert his own brilliance. The constant, almost nervous invocation of a great memory at his rallies, a protest against the gaffes and confusions that so frequently surfaced. The relentless, unverified claims of a high IQ, a number he would never produce because the performance of having it was always more important than the reality of proving it. And who could forget the most telling confession of all, the moment the mask of intellectual depth slipped entirely, revealing the hollow core beneath. "I know words, I have the best words." This was not a statement of a logophile. It was the empty boast of a man who believes vocabulary is a trophy to be collected, not a tool for understanding. This is the core tenet of his brand, the illusion of infallible competence, a fortress built on the shifting sand of his own declarations. But every fortress has its cracks, and the contrast between the man and the myth is where the entire facade crumbles. This is the man who stood at a podium and casually suggested the injection of disinfectant as a medical treatment, a moment of such stunning ignorance it left the world breathless. This is the leader who, when speaking of the most traumatic national event in modern memory, confused the date of 9/11 with a convenience store. This is the self-proclaimed intellectual titan, whose every unscripted moment reveals a profound disconnect from basic, established facts. The sheer, staggering weight of these contradictions reveals a deep-seated insecurity, a frantic need to build a fortress of self-praise to hide a foundation that is fundamentally weak. He had spent a lifetime, an entire career, building and reinforcing this persona brick by brittle brick. But on that night, under the bright, revealing lights of Hollywood, he was about to meet a prosecutor who knew exactly how to cross-examine a false witness. But across from the bluster and the boast sat a different kind of American story, one written not in headlines but in hard work. This is the story of Jasmine Crockett, and her journey to that pivotal chair began not on a political stage, but in the heart of St. Louis, where a little girl learned that real strength wasn't about being the loudest voice in the room, but the most prepared. That early fire led her not to the spotlight, but to the library, to the courtroom, to the gritty and unglamorous trenches of justice. She became a civil rights lawyer, a public defender, a choice that speaks volumes about her character. This wasn't a path to fame or fortune. It was a calling to stand for the voiceless, to be a shield for the powerless against the immense weight of the system. This is where her intelligence was forged, in the crucible of real-world consequence. Think of the kind of mind that this work requires. It's not about a hypothetical number on a test. It's the pre-dawn hours poring over thousands of pages of case law, finding the one precedent that could save a client's future. It's the rapid-fire, on your feet thinking required to outmaneuver a seasoned prosecutor, to spot a flaw in testimony, to cross-examine a police officer and expose the truth. This is applied intelligence, gritty and resilient, tested under pressure where a single misstep could cost a person their freedom. This is the sharpening of a blade, not the polishing of a trophy. Her election to Congress was simply an expansion of that same fight, and she quickly became known for a style that was both razor-sharp and relentlessly composed. In committee hearings, she didn't need to scream or grandstand. Her quiet, methodical questioning, her refusal to be intimidated, could dismantle a witness's testimony with surgical precision. So, as she sat across from Jimmy Kimmel, the contrast could not have been more profound. While one man endlessly talked about being a genius, Jasmine Crockett had spent her entire adult life proving it, not to television audiences, but to the most skeptical audiences of all, judges and juries. She was armed with a weapon her opponent had never truly faced in a debate, verified, demonstrated, and unassailable competence. The stage was set, the jury was the American public, and she was about to enter a different kind of courtroom. And so, the interview began. At first, it followed a familiar, almost comfortable script. Donald Trump, basking in the studio's applause, was in his element. He launched into grandiose stories, painting himself as the hero of his own epic tales of deals and victories, his voice a familiar cadence of confidence and hyperbole. The audience responded with laughter, the kind that greets a performer they've come to see. He commanded the space, his gestures broad, his smile assured. He was the center of gravity in the room, and for those first few minutes, the illusion of his control was absolute. Jimmy Kimmel played his part to perfection, the amused and affable host, nodding along, offering the gentle prod that kept the stories flowing. But beneath the surface, bonhomie, a subtle shift was occurring. Kimmel, with the deftness of a master fisherman, began to gently steer the conversation into deeper, more dangerous waters. He didn't confront or challenge directly. Instead, he baited the hook with a topic he knew his guest could never resist. He brought up the subject of intelligence, of natural ability, of the very essence of the genius persona. And just as predicted, Trump took the bait without a moment's hesitation. The bravado dialed up, the stories of his own brilliance began to flow more freely. He returned to his greatest hit, the claim of the high IQ, presenting it not as a debatable point, but as an established, self-evident fact. He was building his case, but it was a case built on the flimsiest of evidence, his own unsupported testimony. And through it all, the camera would periodically find Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. She wasn't scowling or rolling her eyes. She was doing something far more dangerous. She was observing. Her gaze was focused, analytical, her head tilted slightly as if listening not just to the words, but to the cadence, the gaps in logic, the unspoken insecurities lurking beneath the bluster. She was a public defender once more, sitting at her counsel's table, quietly studying a witness on the stand, noting every inconsistency, every tell, every moment of overreach. The tension in the studio was no longer one of loud conflict, but of quiet, Intellectual anticipation. He was delivering his entire opening argument, unaware that the most skilled cross-examiner in the room was silently, methodically building her rebuttal. Then came the moment of truth. The rally clip ended, Kimmel posed his question, and a profound silence fell over the studio. All eyes were on Congresswoman Crockett. She didn't jump in. She took a deliberate, thoughtful pause, letting the weight of the query settle over the audience. This was not a moment for a quick, witty retort. This was a moment for a dissection, and when she began to speak, her voice was measured, her tone that of a professor explaining a fundamental concept to a stubborn student. She launched not an insult but a masterclass in distinction. "You know, Jimmy," she started, "intelligence isn't this one monolithic thing you either have or you don't. In my line of work, you see it broken down into its components." And she began to lay them out with the clarity of a legal brief. There's emotional intelligence, the ability to understand and connect with other human beings, to read a room, to lead with compassion. There's analytical intelligence, the skill to deconstruct a complex problem, to see the hidden connections, to weigh evidence without prejudice. And yes, there's factual recall, the simple ability to remember and accurately relay information. She spoke from experience, from having seen actual IQ tests used in legal proceedings, explaining what they are designed to measure, and more importantly, what they are not. They don't measure integrity, she implied. They don't measure wisdom. They certainly don't measure character. Then, she pivoted, delivering the core of her argument with a devastating calm that resonated far louder than any shout ever could. "The smartest people I know," she said, her gaze steady and assured, "are usually the ones who are curious, who ask questions, who actually listen to the answers. They are the people secure enough to utter the three most powerful words in the English language: I don't know." With each word, she was systematically dismantling the entire facade, the true test of intelligence. She continued, her voice gaining a quiet, inspirational power. "Isn't a score you brag about on a stage. It's a test you take every single day of your life. It's this: can you actually solve a complex problem when it's placed in front of you? Can you look at a failure, a mistake you've made, and truly learn from it? And perhaps most importantly, can you lead not with intimidation, but with empathy?" She never looked at Trump, never addressed him directly. She didn't have to. Her every syllable was a direct, unassailable refutation of his entire being. The camera cut to him, and the transformation was stark. The performative smile he had been wearing like a mask began to stiffen, then falter. His eyes, which usually darted around a room seeking approval, were now fixed ahead, unblinking. The bravado had vanished, replaced by a tense, frozen stillness. He was not being booed or heckled, he was being outclassed, and the silence in the room was more humiliating than any roar of disapproval. The audience wasn't laughing, they were captivated, leaning forward, absorbing this lesson in real time. It was like watching a balloon, overinflated with hot air, not pop in a dramatic instant, but begin to deflate with a slow, silent, and utterly inescapable hiss, until all that was left was the crumpled, empty reality of what had always been inside. The tremor that began in that Hollywood studio instantly rippled out, becoming a social and political seismic event. The clip of Congresswoman Crockett's calm, surgical takedown didn't just go viral, it detonated. This wasn't a simple burn or a meme for quick laughs. It was a breakdown, video shared and analyzed with a sense of revelation. Political commentators, stunned by its effectiveness, played it on loop on cable news, labeling it the definition of intellectual integrity. Psychologists and educators praised it in threads, dissecting how Crockett had masterfully reframed the entire concept of intelligence itself. On social media, it was a watershed. Hashtags like #ForRealSmarts and the Crockett Test began trending, not as attacks, as affirmations. People from all walks of life, teachers, nurses, engineers, scientists, began using the hashtag to post about their own definitions of true intelligence: patience, mentorship, quiet problem solving, the courage to admit uncertainty. The public conversation had been shifted. In montages of news panels, pundits from across the spectrum acknowledged the power of the moment, analyzing it as the key instance where Trump's boastful persona was stripped bare, revealing the fundamental lack of any substantive defense beneath. The response from his camp was, predictably, a torrent of fury and insults, but this time it felt different. It felt weak, defensive, and utterly hollow against the unshakable poise and substantive truth Crockett had displayed. Their loud anger was just more noise, and the public had just been given a taste of a profound signal. Crockett had accomplished what years of political opponents, billions in opposition spending, and countless scandals had failed to do. She gave the American people a new, devastatingly clear, and morally sound lens through which to view his endless boasts. She had defined the terms of the test. She had written the questions. And by her definition, the definition of curiosity, humility, and applied wisdom, he had already, and very publicly, failed. The tremor that began in that Hollywood studio instantly rippled out, becoming a social and political seismic event. The clip of Congresswoman Crockett's calm, surgical takedown didn't just go viral, it detonated. This wasn't a simple burn or a meme for quick laughs. It was a breakdown video shared and analyzed with a sense of revelation. Political commentators, stunned by its effectiveness, played it on loop on cable news, labeling it the definition of intellectual integrity. Psychologists and educators praised it in threads, dissecting how Crockett had masterfully reframed the entire concept of intelligence itself. On social media, it was a watershed. Hashtags like #FayRealSmarts and for the Crockett Test began trending, not as attacks but as affirmations. People from all walks of life, teachers, nurses, engineers, scientists, began using the hashtag to post about their own definitions of true intelligence, patience, mentorship, quiet problem solving, the courage to admit uncertainty. The public conversation had been shifted. In montages of news panels, pundits from across the spectrum acknowledged the power of the moment, analyzing it as the key instance where Trump's boastful persona was stripped bare, revealing the fundamental lack of any substantive defense beneath. The response from his camp was, predictably, a torrent of fury and insults, but this time it felt different. It felt weak, defensive, and utterly hollow against the unshakable poise and substantive truth Crockett had displayed. Their loud anger was just more noise, and the public had just been given a taste of a profound signal. Crockett had accomplished what years of political opponents, billions in opposition spending, and countless scandals had failed to do. She gave the American people a new, devastatingly clear, and morally sound lens through which to view his endless boasts. She had defined the terms of the test. She had written the questions, and by her definition, the definition of curiosity, humility, and applied wisdom, he had already, and very publicly, failed. But beyond the trending hashtags and the frantic news cycles lies the quiet, enduring truth. The story of Crockett versus Trump is more than a political clash. It is a modern fable for our time, a timeless lesson about the fundamental difference between credentials and character, between a title and genuine talent. It reminds us that true intelligence was never meant to be a trophy to be displayed on a mantelpiece. It is not a number, not a word you assign to yourself. True intelligence is a tool for building, for understanding complex problems, for solving the real-world challenges that people face every day. It is a tool for empathy, for connecting with the struggles of others, not for belittling them. Crockett's victory, a victory not of insults but of ideas, reaffirms a belief we desperately want to hold on to, that in the long run, substance will always have more lasting power than spectacle. Character will outlast character assassination. So let this be the takeaway that you carry with you long after this video ends. You don't need to boast about your IQ. You don't need to proclaim your own genius, your work, the integrity of your character, your resilience in the face of your own struggles. That is your test. That is the only test that truly matters. And it is one you pass every single day, not by saying so, but by the simple, powerful, and undeniable act of doing so. Jasmine Crockett gave us the ultimate standard. The real test isn't on a piece of paper. It's in our daily actions, in our character, and in our quiet commitment to doing what is right. If you believe, as we do, that real intelligence is measured by integrity and tangible results, not by the loudest boasts, then you're already a vital part of this community. You understand that principle will always triumph over performance. Help us continue to share these crucial stories. Subscribe to this channel for more journeys that uncover the true heart of leadership and courage. Share this video with someone in your life who needs a powerful reminder of what authentic strength and intellect look like. And let us know in the comments. Tell us about someone you know who may never boast, but who demonstrates that profound, real intelligence in everything they do, every single day.